The following is a Live the Dream Media production.
Hello and welcome to the Faith Family Schools podcast with your host, Christopher DeSimone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher DeSimone, and welcome to America's Road Back, Faith, Family, and Schools. This is a podcast that we're going to get out there to the rest of you good people and talk about how America's way back. Because some of you are sitting there going, my gosh, what happened to my country? Well, it's has slowly been disappearing for 50, 60 years, and we're going to talk about the hard work that has to get done to bring it back, to get America on the road back to where you want it to be and where you remember it was. So we're going to start off with my good friend Joe Higgins. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
And Joe and I used to do a radio show in Tucson, a morning drive show that we started basically, let's say, 5 months after Barack Obama won the 2008 elections.
Right. It was a play-by-play for 8 years of that Pandora's box of what was coming after us.
And we were cockeyed optimists.
We're going to change it. We played local. Pretty
Right.
heavy. We played heavily locally. Did some state stuff, but really focused on local.
But think about it, right? We used to talk about our show theme. We used to have Revolution by the Beatles, Changes David Bowie, all of those different things. We're like, we're going to change it. Joe, what was the moment that we said, we started thinking maybe politics, it starts with 2012 for me, but
Yeah.
is that the year that we kind of started figuring
Is that when we
out?
put the Monty Python's theme song?
Right.
Right.
Right, we went to, instead of David Bowie Changes, we went to Look on the Bright Side of Life.
Right, if you know that movie reference. You know, we tried so many things. We tried raising money. We tried running candidates. We tried, think tanks. We tried legal aspects.
That's true.
We tried all kinds of different things. And I was a big believer in the market. And I kept thinking, well, the market will figure it out, right? So Tucson will react, our market, our Tucson area. The local school district, which is just, hemorrhaging students and poor results, they'll figure it out because the market will respond.
Sure.
And the market never did. And if you look further out now today, look at Portland, look at San Francisco. How bad does it have to get before the voters wake up or the people running this place look at your community locally and say, let's do something different? So for me, it was probably around 2012 after the Romney election that I started to get a little bit more like, maybe it's just ridicule and comedy and humor to get people to look at it.
Well, we also saw it in our local elections also, not just in the presidential election. We saw that people were literally okay with bad crime, bad roads, bad parks, and then in the last few years with all this federal money that's flowed out there, it's kind of all these municipalities, it's delayed the market reaction to that, I think, a little bit, right? Oh, we got enough money, we're paying our budgets and that kind of thing. But
did you, let's take Portland and San Francisco recently. Did you ever think it would get that bad to the point where voters are not making a move and changing? Or
I wouldn't think Tucson would get that bad.
Yeah.
We're in Tucson, Arizona, by the way.
Right. But what is it like? So the question
podcast.
is why, and what's it going to take, right? Why? Is it because I'm a D, my dad was a D, and I'm a D, and I believe in D, and D's my religion? Or is it because it hasn't hit me personally enough yet in those cities, our city or Portland or San Francisco? Why and what is it going to take?
Right. So we always talk about the level of distraction for the average human is massive right now in relation to technology, bad entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not even reading bad books. They don't even read books anymore, right? Then, of course, we have our phones.
Yep.
And we got people walking around like zombies with that. I think it's also a lack of education, right? Ignorance.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be insulting, but it's the idea that the average person out there, I feel as though we've gone through generationally, has less common sense, less book sense, less awareness.
Yeah.
They just kind of, and now also, I think after pandemic world, a lot of them said, oh, my work lets me work at home. I don't even have to go outside anymore. My kids don't even have to go outside anymore. And I feel like that insulation's even made it worse.
Yeah.
Right?
But look at let's take it San Francisco. Look at your elites that run the place. There's a lot of money in that community. That's up there with New York as far as real estate values and hoteliers and restaurants, and the Silicon Valley folks are all there. At what point do they just say enough? And at what point do they say, let's we've done a recall. I think they got the DA out of there as one of the Soros DAs, but the new guy or the new person isn't doing anything different. That's the part that I look at today and go, other than, so the theme we're going to talk about in these is faith, family, and religion, faith, family, and schools, right? So you touched on schools and education and how to get people to think differently. But has religion gone away to the point where you're worshiping your political party or that fills the void of belonging or of being a part of something? I'm part of this D thing. Meanwhile, you're losing all your major retailers, your crime is through the roof. I look and I think, what is behind this and what has caused this? And I think you're right with education and being, phones and all the distractions we have. But it's starting to hit people like in San Francisco or many of these communities right in the face, right? It's there's a bum sleeping out front of your house, and this beautiful home you owned is getting encampments in front of it.
Back to your question about the market, right? The market responding. Well, I feel like we saw the market respond during the lockdown period, right? All of those people escaping California and various states.
Going to Texas and Florida. Yep.
Right. So I think we saw that. I don't know how long that's going to keep going. It might.
Right.
I think also we always talk about it's just nature. It's just natural in our human nature. We want to be part of a tribe.
Yep.
Now, tribalism has a bad connotation to it because sometimes we let that become the definitive thing on how we make decisions, talk about things, think about things.
Right.
But everyone wants to be part of a tribe.
Right.
And I think you're right. Back on the faith side is, we used church and family. Well, it used to be family was our number one tribe.
Yep.
Right?
Takes a village, Chris.
Right. Thank you. Then at the same time, we talk about the church should be kind of one of your other kind of defining tribal aspects, right, as your church. And then it could be your school, right, or other things. But
Rotary, your community stuff. Yeah.
And
Tocqueville talked about it.
Right, and your politics.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's all been jumbled up now.
Right. On purpose or intentionally or randomly or lack of leadership or. But yeah, no, I think that's what people are worshiping. They're so focused on whatever it is, the correct pronoun or whatever the thing du jour is, the Ukraine or BLM or whatever it is. That is the new religion that's taking over a lot of these blue cities and blue states. And I think there's a vacuum. And that's the conversation I want to have with you. That's the area that I'm focused on my life after doing radio with you and politics and kind of in the trenches and blocking and tackling. It's bigger. It's bigger than that. It's faith, family, and schools.
I see people always say, "Why is Hollywood so crappy? Why is schools, colleges, churches?" However you want to, whatever
Media,
word you want
pharma,
to put in there.
Right, yeah, where do you want to go?
Why is it so, and why are there so many bad people serving in Congress or by state legislature or all those? So in the end, it all's going to flow downstream from faith, family, and schools.
Yep, totally. And if you're, I'll tell you an anecdotal story. So we'll get into more of my background, but as I'm building through my curriculum and I'm combing through old history textbooks and I'm looking at the questions that are asked. And up until about mid-'90s, all the questions are pretty straightforward. Dates, times, who, About mid-'90s is when I started to see things like how did Christopher Columbus exploit the Indians? Or things that were critical of American history. And that was where the critical race theory and the critical history theory and the critical feminist theory started to squeeze into our lexicon and our K-12. A guy named Howard Zinn wrote a bunch of textbooks that popped up into high school, and then that kept working its way down. And that's now what you're seeing manifest in society, because the 90s, those kids that went through high school in the 90s are your professors and your teachers and your leaders of today. So you started injecting this, well, maybe America's not that great. Maybe, there are some warts, which of course there are. There are warts in every history and every story.
Sure.
But when you start not appreciating the blessing and the amazing experience we have as a country, then you start tearing things down.
Sure.
So I think that's, to your point, that's the root of it.
Let's start with the family unit, right? Which is kind of everyone's starts in a family unit, or hopefully they do. And look at the disintegration of that since the 60s. Is that
kind of the Monahan report was pretty powerful.
Explain the Monahan report.
You kind of looked at the role of welfare and impacts on the black family, I think is what Monahan talked about. This was 60s, late 60s.
Right.
And just fast forward that forward. But the role of injecting services, let me give you an anecdotal conversation. I was involved in a Catholic Community Services, which was a social service agency here locally that we did poverty and adoption and healthcare, and it was the active arm of the church. Under the Bush administration, a lot of money flowed through these type of social service church organizations. Lutheran services.
You're not going to make me do my 1,000 points of light, Joe, are you?
Jewish Family Services. His philosophy was, the government's philosophy at the time, is let's push money through these church-based organizations who have run leaner and meaner. They're mission-focused. Let's supplement them to raise the poverty issues or give into the community. And when Obama came into office, I watched that completely reverse. And it turned more to let's build government programs and staff it with bureaucratic folks from the government side to do the same work.
I don't know, because I could argue that the 1,000 points of light made those nonprofit charity organizations start becoming like another government bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped running leader and meter. I see it in the Catholic world.
Yep. Free cheese.
All the time.
Right, here's your free cheese.
So let's go back to on the family side, right? So and also another book I recommend people read is called The Vision of the Anointed by Thomas Sowell, who's an economist from the Hoover Institute at Stanford, and he talks about this the Great Society and how it basically had made more poor people than ever alleviating the miseries of poverty. So we have sexual revolution, birth control, Roe v. Wade,
Vatican II.
Right? Great Society, right? What is that? All within 6 years of each other?
Yeah. Turbulent 60s.
Right? That's your breakdown of the family unit.
Yep.
Right? There's no stigma for having sex outside of the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There is birth control now on demand.
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court said abortion on demand is cool.
Yep.
Right? And at the same time, it was the idea that, Mom, you may not need that dad. It's okay.
Yep.
Right? And we got dads, all these dads that were horrible. Dr. Laura would call them sperm donors.
Yep.
They're a huge part of this problem also. But that's culturally, right? We're going to go back to downstream from faith, family, and schools.
Right. Right. And you talk about unwed births out of wedlock and the role of not having a father in a household and what that starts doing to society over time. And, to your point, we're 50 years in on this experiment that happened. And meanwhile, you had a baby boom come through and you had a unipolar world. So America stepped into the role of leader of the world. Lots of money sloshing around, fiat money.
So where are we? I just want to do an overview here, and then we'll start. So let's talk about faith. Same time period.
Yeah.
Is it the same? Is it that late 60s, early 70s through now, where we started to see the church not play as big of a role as it used to?
So, man, we did the show for a long time, and I would comb through data, and I would eventually started to have these themes, and faith is one of them, and schools are another, and families are another. And I created 12 arguments why America's on the wrong track. Then I went out and started looking at history and started looking at the cycle of history. And there's 4 or 5 major historians. The most recent one is Neil Howe with Fourth Turning that talk about this cycle of history. And it's usually about once every 80 years. And if you just think about it, Tytler's another one, and there's a couple others. If you think about it, the Depression era generation suffered greatly and had a really difficult time. And what did they want to do but bless their children, the boomers, with everything they could think of?
I never want this to happen to you.
Right. We're going to make sure you don't have to struggle, basically. And what that did is you took the repressive 1950s where you had kind of a faith and you had post-World War II and you created a baby boom of boomers. They then have the next generation. So it's the cycle of history. And I think you see it goes back into Civil War and it goes back into Ottoman Empire and
holy
Roman
crap! I just said 80 years later. That's right now.
Right, and so I would say it's I boil a lot of this down to no food, one problem, too much food, many problems. The Depression generation had no food, so they had one thing to think about every day. We are living in such abundance of everything that we fixate on the stupidest stuff possible because we've lost sight of what made America great, the importance of why the families work, all those kind of things.
So what happened with the churches over 40, 50 years here. So why aren't they as relevant as they used to be in 2023?
Oh, wow. COVID was a pretty big nail in the coffin for many of them. Mega churches chasing donors, prosperity gospel instead of having real hardcore conversations. You're my Catholic.
So I see it in the Catholic Church.
Right.
So there would be priests that from the pulpit that would be talking money first and Jesus second.
Right.
Where my argument to them has always been, just do A, B, C plus D.
Right.
The money will show up. Right. Do an amazing mass. Be sincere. Educate the flock. Right. Kick butt on high holy days.
Right.
The money will come, and if the money doesn't come, you say, you know something, we're going to say mass in the dark.
Yep.
It's okay.
Yep.
We're going to be outside in the light because it's too warm in here.
Right.
And we're going to do it outside, and then people either they're going to think you're worth it or not,
right,
and give you money.
Right.
But what happened was I kept on seeing too much of that. I think they were expected by their bosses to be property managers, like they're running a hotel restaurant, than being someone who's supposed to be leading a flock of Christians.
Yep. And if you kind of hit some of the negative gospels or word in the Bible, then you start losing you have controversy. You have folks that they feel uncomfortable.
Oh, they push hippie Jesus and not the totality of Jesus' gospel, right?
Yep.
Right. We don't want to talk about those money changers in the temple thing, right? That's a little uncomfortable.
Right.
So that's my thing is, so to me on the church side, and this is we're not saying this is a total.
No, there's bright lights everywhere. Education, families, on and on. There's bright lights all over the place, of course.
So my take and my feel, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's just that there's a lack of relevancy on what a lot of churches are doing for the average person. And the idea that attendance, and we know the Southern Baptist numbers they came out with, over a 10-year period, were devastating what the Southern Baptist Church lost.
Yep.
And then you're right, COVID was
the Methodist Church had the big schism over, I think it was gay marriage, where they divided in half. They're all under assault. And is it on purpose? If you're going to take a country a different direction, you've got to break down families. You've got to break down the churches. What's the first thing a teapot dictator does when they come into a new leadership? Is they get rid of the churches. I mean,
or they take it over and put their own guy, or put their own guy in the charge of the whole place.
Right and left. Hitler did it. Stalin did it. I mean,
but also the people who are elevating to these positions of power, and why they're maybe not the greatest or a little broken or very broken is there's what kind of family unit did they come from? Did they have any sort of faith-based journey through their life? And who educated them?
Right.
And then on the school side, which we'll get a little more deep dive in. So, and again, the idea of, we could talk about the Yuri Bezmenov, naked communist and all that stuff on why. But let's just talk about what actually happened. We saw the idea of the rise of the public school, which sounded great.
Right. Everybody should be educated. That had a great start.
Right.
It was part of one of the reasons America worked really well. The one-room schoolhouse. And Tocqueville, when he came out in the early 1800s, did the full analysis of America. That was one of the things he looked at is education. So it was an important thing. And if you look at third world countries that rise, usually they spend a lot of time educating their population, their young ones, so that they understand the power of democracy and what they have and what they own and what they got. I think, one of the things we're going to talk a little bit about is bureaucracies. And I think, like many things, it's mission creep, right? So it starts out with a positive mission and things are great, and then it becomes, feathering a nest and how do I get more money? And, schools have creeped into a lot of things that's not part of their mission. And when I was running schools, I was always very careful about that. It's like, why are we here? And there's always need. There's going to be a need to
so that was a question
of everything.
So we talk about common elements in the breakdown of faith, family, and schools. Mm-hmm. So bureaucracy, right? Mm-hmm. The growth of the bureaucracy, the need to feed the bureaucracy with more money and resources. What are a couple of other elements you think that are common in those?
Well, in K-12 in particular, the increase of federal dollars and federal regulations, Title IXs, and all the different things that are going on from the federal level, and with those come strings, free and reduced lunch programs, and The education was the one thing reserved to the states, among others, but it was the most important. If you look at all your state budgets, about 2/3 or so in most states are their K-12 education world. And as the feds kind of move into this world, or you come up with a standardized system, whether it be a curriculum like Common Core or whatnot, those are kind of golden handcuffs. Like, here's some money, but you got to do X. So you start losing that autonomy. So I would say
the government money. I guess this is all of them, right? Faith, family, and schools.
Mm-hmm.
Government money poisoning the well in all three.
Yeah, look at universities with the student loan debacle that's happening.
Right.
Who's accountable to that? Not the university. The student is. They're not getting out of that thing.
Once that loan kicks in.
Right, but look at the medical community. That was kind of, Medicare came in and doctors lost a lot of their autonomy. They've turned into this kind of machine that is dictated by Medicare or by Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. But it starts with one top down. Here's how it's going to work. And we're in a country that was never the way it was planned. It was supposed to be pitting powers against each other, states' rights, all these different things. And as you eliminate that, you have more and more big mission creep. And then, of course, if I've got the money and I've got a market position, I can buy my access and I can have rent seeking and I can make sure my little world stays profitable and the market doesn't react to that.
So there's also when it talks to federal money, it's your attitude towards the money.
Right.
So, probably 50 years. We're gonna go back to my birth year is all the trouble.
Mm-hmm.
The attitude, there's like a sense of honor, like somehow you got away with something or you're amazing because you scored the government dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even think like that.
No, it wasn't like that 20 years ago.
Right.
Wasn't. I'm an entrepreneur, so I've done this all my life. It's harder and harder every day to do it because the regulatory burden, let's put this hurdle in, and that gives someone that's bigger than me or that has access to something politically the ability to say no to me. And that happens all over. And I feel bad for the upstarts today. Look at the entrepreneur class. It's just not there. And it's this creep of bureaucracy, I think.
Inherently, for me, the dislike that I'm going to take federal money from anything, it's so anathema to me, right? But people out there there are people out there who are giving, my grandmother used to call it a spit medal. Look what I did.
Yep.
Who are giving themselves spit medals because they know how to work the system and get all this money, right? Then we talk about the last couple of years of how much money has been blowing through in the world of the ill-named Inflation Reduction Act,
right?
Build Back Better, all these things, and look what that's done. All that explosion of federal money,
right.
It's made it untenable to live an average life in America right now.
Yeah. Anecdotal story, just to show how this happens and starts. We helped a person get elected to our big local lumbering school district. And we put a little kitchen cabinet around him. And we brought in experts from different parts of the world, education world or business finance world, HR and grants and all the different things. And we sat at a kitchen table and kind of tried to say, okay, how do we help steer this big monster ship into a new direction? And what we kind of learned and heard is there would be a federal grant for something that was, beautiful and shiny and awesome and helpful. They would give it to you for 3 to 5 years, and then that would go away. But you're stuck now providing that service with an unfunded mandate. So whatever it is, pick them because they're all over the place.
Sure.
So over time, it becomes your mission. Well, I have to do this. I have to provide pre-K mandatory or after school or mental health or because that's who's coming in my door and that's my mission. Well, no, your mission is to educate the future workforce and the future people and the future parents and the future leaders of our country, not be this big social program. So what I think happens that way is the feds give it a little bit. Medicaid expansion is a great one under Obamacare, right? Sure. We're going to do it for 3 years or 5 years, pay 100%. Well, when you're in that, then you're stuck. Then you can't get out of it. And these states now have to manage to do that all the time, right? So it's golden handcuffs. It's to your point. It's the money comes in and it's beautiful and I can get it and I can take it. But then what comes with that?
So we have our good friend. He's called into our show, my show. We used to be our show together, whatever. David Schweikert, congressman since 10.
Mm-hmm.
And we've asked him off and on, how does this end?
Right, right.
Right. And so we always say to him, and he's on Ways and Means, he's in on everything. And we said, I just asked him this 2 weeks ago, can the United States Congress intentionally, internally change the way they do business for the better, right? Because we're always talking about it blowing up deficits. And he just was on the show last week that the Social Security fund is toast in 8 to 9 years. All these things we've always heard. We're going to do Groundhog's Day on a budget coming up. So in the end,
guess what they're going to do?
I think they're going to do a continuing resolution until 1 month after next year's elections.
Totally.
And so in the end, he never says, yes, Congress can fix this. So back to faith, family, and schools.
It's not a political fix,
right?
We're downstream of that. Yeah.
It's always so. You and I would talk about whatever we were doing, trying to change our area of Southern Arizona. And you said it before, we're running candidates. You started a public legal, like interest law thing, like Goldwater up in Phoenix. We talked about all these things we've done, and in the end, we were speed bumps.
Yeah.
Right. And so even if you're someone who's a Republican and you're hoping that the 2024 elections is going to be House by 30 margin, and we're going to get the Senate, and it's going to be let's say there's 60 Republicans and Republican president. How long does that last?
Right. Mm-hmm.
20 years?
Right.
No, that's right. 2 years. I was going to say add a zero.
Mm-hmm.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a few more if things get great.
So as we keep this dialogue going about schools, which is where I play, this is a 35-year plan, right?
Yep.
We've got to get to the point where we're getting
so we can make
basics,
the comeback, Joe.
So that whatever happens in those next 35 years, and I have my vision and thoughts and ideas. I think the debt's going to get us. I think that's my biggest argument on the future of our country is Social Security, Medicare, and we're paying 2/3 of our income, taxable income, towards debt service now because the Fed's raising rates. That's going to get us. There's going to come a day when the world goes, I don't think these people are going to pay it back.
Sure.
And that day, I don't know when it is. It's not going to be a good day. So there'll be some change and some rockiness. But my vision and hope is that those 35 years of planting seeds into the schools, working within the churches, trying to do things that are reinforcing family. In fact, the president of Hungary is doing some interesting stuff around family creation. Those are the things that the next generation will come up. People our age, 35 years from now.
Because this podcast is called The Road Back.
Right. We'll wake up and go, well, let's go back to that stuff that worked.
So you still have faith we can come back.
Right. I do. No, that. Yep. So I wrote a book called The 12 Arguments Why America's on the Wrong Track. And I subtitle it The One Way to Fix It. And the one way to fix it, for me, is the schools, K-12. We've got to get to a conversation about teaching, history and values and virtues and character development and critical thinking and a way to think about what could be instead of these stupid 30-second hits that we get from these dumb things.
So hold on to that. What we're going to do, we're going to tackle education
Sure.
in another episode together. So if you're listening out there and faith, family, of schools is something that you feel is part of America's road back. Now, Dave, you're going to have to help me. What's it? We have an email, don't we? Dave, what's our email? I love it. faithfamilyschools@gmail.com. And if you're someone who wants to find out more about what we're doing, or you want to share your experience, or you have some great guests that we should talk to, again, faithfamilyschools@gmail.com. So we'll be back soon with another episode, and we're going to tackle education with my good friend Joe Higgins. Joe, thanks for being here as
Sure.
always. You're going to see Joe many times, I think, during this conversation, because him and I have this discussion over coffee, breakfast, and he has a place out in Southern Arizona, a little ranch, and we sit with cows by an open fire and talk about such things. So come join us and be part of our open campfire of discussions, how America can make it on the road back through faith, family, and schools. Everyone, have a great day. We'll catch you on the next episode.